I have a real bone to pick with college football playoff committee.
Yes.
I think what they did to Florida State was an utter injustice. We've seen, it's not really a playoff. This is an invitational, and it's an eyeball test. It's run by a bunch of guys, which is why I made that comment about Brett Yormark. These are guys making 6 and 7 figures who gather at a resort and play a fantasy football draft with college football teams. And I mean, if they're wrong or whatever, there's no consequence to any of it. So Florida State goes undefeated in a Power 5 conference, and they don't get in. The results now, this won't happen again because the college football playoff field will be expanded next year to 12 teams.
Or because the 13th team would be mad.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're not going to care as much as about a 9-3 team as we are about a team that just went 12-0 in the
No,
ACC.
we're not. And
to me, this is Georgia has a right to be mad. I mean, if I'm to me, the one team that doesn't belong here is Alabama. And they put them in because they beat Georgia. Now, we disregard the fact that Alabama needed a miracle in a 3-man rush by Auburn at the end of the Alabama-Auburn game. Not a very, very good Auburn team. An Auburn team that lost to New Mexico State, by the way. That's the only reason they're here. And I'm not a Florida State fan. I have no dog in Florida State. I have no money who went there, nothing like that. But when it comes to this thing, we've seen injustices and debates and all this other stuff. This one takes the cake. And if I'm Florida State, if I'm those players, I'm like, you know what? I got a cold. I don't think I'm going to play. And we're seeing it now with all these second-tier bowl games. Guys are out. Guys are transferring. They're gone. They're not even going to play. These things are going to become glorified scrimmages, spring ball scrimmages. These second-tier bowl games. The Ohio State quarterback's transferring. He's not even going to play in the Cotton Bowl against Missouri, and on and on and on.
I think they told him to leave.
Whatever, however you want to.
No, I agree.
We're still charging $350.
Let me get back to Florida State. First of all, I always thought that the going to 4 was always wrong. They should have went to 12. It's ridiculous.
You're talking about right away?
Yes. I mean, it was stupid. I mean, what are we doing going to 4? I mean, that was never played calling the playoffs. It was never a playoff. It was always a pick. Just like when it was 2. I mean, it should have always been 12. I mean, it should have always been expanded. If you're gonna do the playoffs, do the playoffs. It was always wrong. It always felt wrong, and we just never got a situation like we have this year where you're really picking the network and you're picking a team, and you'd rather piss off the ACC than the SEC. I mean, let's be honest about this. You're not gonna. What is ACC gonna do? What is Florida State gonna do? You don't want to.
Ultimately,
you don't want us to upset SEC. You have to have the SEC team there.
None of them are going to do anything.
So even if Georgia would have won, they'd have still left Florida State off for Texas.
Well, I don't. When you start getting splitting hairs, my contention was the same thing I said last year about TCU. TCU lost in overtime the Big 12 championship game to a good Kansas State team, and there was justifiably some concern that they were going to leave them out. But my issue is this: is like you went undefeated in a Power 5 league. I mean, what else are you supposed to do?
And you beat LSU. I mean, that wasn't like you beat a team from SEC. No, it's unfair. And it is an eyeball test. And if we were a betting man, and I know it's unfair on paper, if you're a betting man, you would not bet Florida State to win, though. And I think part of this is it's.
I guess hang on, time out. If it was Florida State against Michigan, I'm not a believer in Michigan. I'm just not.
That's fine, but the problem here is I think. With all due respect to TCU, I mean, they don't want a championship game blowout. They do not want to see that again. And I think that they're on paper, yes, Florida State is undefeated, should be in, but they don't want a situation where you got your backup quarterback, you can't score, and you get your doors blown off. Because
I totally agree.
No one's picking Florida State over Alabama, Georgia.
No way. Here's my issue with that. I get all that. Well, they've done that now for 10 years. Yeah, 10 years. They've done this 14 playoff. Most of them have been blowouts. But the vast majority of the playoff games and championship games have been blowouts. Now, not 65-7, but they've been blowouts. LSU blew it. They've all I looked it up. They've it's a it's a nauseating, disproportionate amount of great games, and that's my big issue about college football.
Well, I mean, there's blowouts,
nothing.
and then there's that thing that happened last year with Georgia and TCU. That's a whole nother level of.
No, it was horrible. It was awful. I mean, it was awful for everybody involved.
Yeah,
it was awful if you bought a ticket to go to that game. Like if you were a Georgia fan, what a waste of time. There was nothing fun about it. It was boring. I mean, it was done by the middle of the second quarter. But if you look at consistently the playoff games, the Notre Dame games, Notre Dame's gotten crushed twice. Michigan State crushed. Washington crushed. LSU destroyed a good Clemson team, and it illustrates and underscores the bigger problem in college football, which is the gap. There's always parity. There's quite a bit of parity between 3 and 30. You'll see 30 beat 3 occasionally. You ain't seen being 2 beat 1 very much. And the gap is so big. Alabama destroyed all these Big Ten teams getting in. The Big Ten is built on Urban Meyer's Ohio State teams. Well, Urban Meyer's been gone for years. Big Ten is 3-6 all time in the playoffs. And don't be surprised when Michigan gets in there and gets its ass kicked by Bama. Now, I'm rooting for Michigan. Are
you? You're rooting for Jim Harbaugh.
Here's why.
You're rooting for the cheaters. You're rooting for cheaters. You hate on Barry Bonds. You're rooting for the cheaters.
No, I'm not. I'm rooting for something different. That's a fair point. And everybody's stealing signs. All right, so you're picking.
No, everybody's been stealing signs. Everybody's been juicing. Everybody's been juicing too since the '60s.
You know what?
They've been taking Reddies and beanies, and they've been
Reddies
cheating.
and beanies are nothing.
Those
are all uppers. No, cocaine and an upper and coffee.
They're just illegal drugs. They help me get through double headers.
It's just not. They're not the same thing. All right, we've been talking.